Are you constantly saying yes when you really want to be saying no? Let's talk about it. Hey there, I'm Giovanna May Reese, your go to self care. I help busy women like you get real about self care with mindfulness, with boundaries, and with a whole lot of self love. On this channel, we talk about how to live a softer and more joyful life. And if you're ready to start now, click the link in the description to get my free mindfulness guide called Slow Down, Sis. It's 5 days of practical strategies that will help you slow down and learn to put yourself first. One of the biggest mistakes I made early in my life and early in my career was saying yes to everything I could because I thought it was what I was supposed to do and it's what I needed to do to get ahead. Today, I'm going to be sharing 5 ways that you can set boundaries that are going to protect your peace and make sure that you protect your energy as well. If you keep saying yes to everything, regardless of whether or not you want to do it, if you say it out of fear, if you say it out of guilt, you are on a path to burnout, stress, and resentment. But when you start setting boundaries, you feel more at peace. You are respecting yourself, and you're also teaching others to respect you as well. And so you're going to be able to focus on the things that really matter and feel more in control of your destiny. So let's get right into it. The first way that you can start setting boundaries is to know your non negotiables. And those are going to be different for everyone. Maybe it's going to be alone time. Maybe it's going to be time for church if you're a churchgoer. Whatever it is, it's one of those things that you are not going to budge on. It's going to happen come hell to high water, whatever's going on in your life, you are not going to negotiate on those things. For instance, for me, it is sleep. People often make fun of me for going to bed so early. I'm usually in bed by 8 or 8:30, and luckily I married a man who also thinks that sleep hygiene is important. And it's not only about sleep hygiene, it's the last time of the day for us to connect, to talk about our day, to, express gratitude. My husband likes to read to me, and so we read together at night as well. And so it's one of those things that, regardless of what's going on in our lives, we make it a priority to get to bed on time. And also, I'm an early riser. And so that helps me stay on top of being an early riser. And as I've said, everyone's non-negotiable is going to be different. It's one of the things that I help my clients with when we first start working together is figuring out what they value, what kind of life they want to have, and what are those non-negotiables going to be. And you might already know what your non-negotiables are. If you know what they are, let me know in the comments. Like I said, mine is sleep, yours might be something else. Let me know. Here's a secret that's not a secret. You cannot do everything. And I'm looking at my notes here to remind me what I was going to say. You cannot do everything, right? And so you have to decide what will you do, what's most important. And that takes us to the second thing that we're going to talk about is practicing saying no. It's crucial that you learn to practice this, and it's going to take practice, especially if you are a people pleaser, because saying no is going to make you feel guilty, and you're going to feel in your body that it's not okay for you to say no, especially if you grew up in a household where you had to do everything that was told of you, as a lot of us did. We did not talk back to our parents, we did not say no. And so we repeat those patterns as we grow up or when we grow up. And so saying no to people can bring up some of those childhood patterns and wounds when it comes to disappointing people and feeling guilty about doing what we think we're supposed to do. And so it's important that you practice saying no and coming up with a phrase as simple as no thank you or I'm not available at that time, and then leaving it at that. I know you guys have all heard the phrase that no is a complete sentence, and that can seem harsh, and it doesn't have to be no with, negative, aggressive energy. It can be a phrase that you have practiced saying or that you have created for yourself that you can practice saying in different situations. But it is important that you don't add a bunch of stuff after your no. If you say, no, I'm not available, maybe next time, or no, I'm not available. Thanks for thinking of me, even though not really, but thanks for thinking of me. If you add things like, well, I would do it, but I can't because of this or that, what you're doing is you are giving people the power to negotiate with you because you are signaling to them that there is some wiggle room. When I was still a high school principal, I used to coach assistant principals and teachers that when they received an email that they thought might be contentious, and even if they didn't think it was going to be contentious, to keep emails brief and fact based. Because if someone is upset with you, when they email you and then you feel like you have to defend yourself. And that may be how you feel at first when you start setting those boundaries, like you have to defend yourself and you have to give a good reason for saying no, then you are inclined to give all of this extra information. And if someone is trying to get you to do something, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to take advantage of you, although sometimes they are trying to take advantage of you. But when you give them that extra information, then you are giving them ammo to come back at you and to pick apart your argument. And if you are new in this journey of setting boundaries and stopping your people pleasing, then you're going to crumble. So don't give people a bunch of extra information. They don't need the extra information. Okay. Number one, your no is good enough. And then number two, you don't want to have to deal with the back and forth of them trying to pick apart your argument. So practice saying no and think of no as a complete sentence. I actually talk about this a little bit more in one of my YouTube videos that I'll link to here, or somewhere that is called Protect Your Energy, How Assistant Principals Can Outsmart Negativity. But really, a lot of the stuff that I talk about in that video can apply to anyone when they are trying to protect their energy from negativity. Another way for us to start setting those boundaries is to communicate clearly. So it's very important for us to be clear when we are communicating those boundaries. We want to practice using I statements. So instead of saying things like, you always interrupt me when I'm working, you might try saying something like, I feel overwhelmed when I stop working when you come into my office, or I feel overwhelmed when I'm interrupted while I'm working. So that keeps it in that I area without using the word you. And the reason why we want to do this is, well, number one, let me say this takes practice because it's in our nature to blame someone for things that we feel that they've done to us. It's normal for us to say, well, you always do this and you always do that, and it's difficult. What's the saying? Like when you're pointing one finger this way, then there's several fingers pointing back. Let's pay attention to the fingers that are pointing back to us and focus on what we are feeling, because that's the thing that we can control. And also, when you say you did this, everyone's first inclination is to defend themselves because they feel attacked. They feel like they are being backed into a corner. And I know that that's difficult sometimes, especially if we feel like we're being taken advantage of and maybe we feel a little bit angry. But I discussed recently, there was this Instagram article that was going around about how being silently pissed off was silently killing women of color, and how we need to, or I talked about how we need to unleash our anger in healthy ways. And I'll link to the video somewhere on here about that. But in that video, I talk about how anger is really on the surface. We talk about the anger iceberg and how beneath the anger, there are all of these other feelings underneath the water. And if we can focus on practicing I statements and communicating clearly with our boundaries, that's going to make people feel more, well, they're still not going to like no, and there's nothing we can do about that, we can't control that, but it's going to make them feel like they're not being blamed, right? We're not saying you always do this, so we're avoiding blaming other people, but more importantly, we're getting more in touch with who we are and what our wants and what our desires are, what our feelings are, and that's going to help us with self-care and really giving ourselves what we need. It's one of those things that we do when we're practicing mindfulness is we need to get in touch with what we're truly feeling and not just stay at the surface level. The next thing that we want to do when we are beginning to set our boundaries is we want to remember to set our boundaries early. When we're in a new situation, like we're in a new job or a new relationship, we want to make sure that we are setting those boundaries from the beginning because that's going to keep you from feeling resentful. How many times have you heard about someone in a relationship who has a partner who does something that they really don't like, but they've been accepting it, right? You've been accepting it. And so when you accept something, you're teaching people that it's okay to do it. And so, I mean, how are they supposed to know? You never said anything. And so it's important for you to know what your boundaries are, know what your non negotiables are. We change that. Know what your non negotiables are and set those boundaries early so that people know how to treat you. You have heard the phrase that you train people or you teach people how to treat you. So if you don't set those boundaries early, then you're going to be like, oh crap, I don't like this. And how do I get out of it? And it becomes a situation where you feel trapped. And I'll be talking later on in this series, because I think I'm going to turn this into a series. I'll be talking about what to do when you're already in the relationship, whether it is professional or romantic, or maybe it's work, and you realize, oh, I think I need boundaries and I should have set them and I didn't. And now I need to do it. And if you need help with that, you might want to sign up for my free email challenge. It is called Master the Art of Boundaries in 7 Days. I'll have the link in the description. And it's just a 7-day email course where you'll receive like an actionable tip or thing to think about each of those 7 days to help you set boundaries, especially with difficult people. So that's a free course. If you're interested, sign up for that. The last thing that we're going to talk about is how you will need to reinforce your boundaries because surprise, surprise, you can't just set a boundary once, right? There might be some situations, some people are really good listeners and they're really going to respect your boundaries and you will not have to say it again. But for most people, you're going to have to repeat those boundaries. You're going to have to reinforce them in a firm and gentle way, but yes, a firm way, because just like when you start talking a bunch about your why you can't do something, whatever, if you're not consistent with those boundaries, you're sending a message that those boundaries are flexible and I can negotiate with you and maybe you'll do what I want to do. And so it takes time. A lot of people talk about setting boundaries. Boundaries is a popular topic to talk about, but a lot of people don't talk about how it's not a one and done. You have to practice having the fortitude to reinstate and reinforce those boundaries so that people know that you mean business. Because if they know you don't mean business, then they're going to push on those boundaries and they're going to knock them down. And then that's going to lead back to the cycle of you feeling stressed out and resentful because you're doing things that you don't really want to do in the first place. And that's not okay. And so you need to, take control. You need to, do like Bobby Brown, it's my prerogative. And you need to say no and stick with it and say no again and again if that is what's in your best interest. If you found this helpful, then please like, share, subscribe because it really helps my channel and I really appreciate it. So please do that. Also, if you're looking for someone to assist you in coming up with your boundaries, looking for your non negotiables, go ahead and book a free clarity conversation. That's a free 30-minute call where we can chat and see if I'm a good fit to help you on this boundary journey. But remember that boundaries are challenging. It's not a one and done, but it's something that is really worth it because it's going to lead to a happier, healthier you because you're not going to be silently pissed off about doing all the things that you don't want to do. So, when I see you guys next time, we're going to be talking about 5 things that you should avoid when you are setting boundaries. So, again, please like, subscribe, and share, comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.